All right, everyone, welcome to this week's Spotlight webinar, kindly hosted by Proboxx. Proboxx is your all-in-one digital logistics provider that provides a digital platform so you can manage your quotes, your shipments, your reports, your documents, all in one central place at the touch of a button 24/7. And this week's Spotlight webinar is with Peter Mantell of Ampersand Accounting. So welcome, Peter.
Hello, welcome. How are you?
How you doing? Okay.
I'm doing well, thank you.
That's good. How's everything going in the States for you right now?
Well, it's hot. It's hot, but it's starting to cool down a little bit finally here. So as pardon my southern, but as y'all begin to get closer to the summer months, we're getting closer to the fall winter, and we're looking forward to it after the summer.
Yeah, I think it's been a hot summer, and also here in Australia, we're gearing up for a hot summer as well. So yeah, we're already feeling that the heat and the spring's been incredible. So welcome to the guys that are actually just joining us on the call now. If you have any questions, please pop them in the chat box. I will keep an eye on the chat and we can answer them then with Peter, and just make sure you're on mute so that we can have the call without any distractions. So Peter, welcome. You're going to be sharing with us today about, this is a really important topic. This is about navigating compliance when expanding into the US. Now, Peter, you are the founder and CEO of Ampersand Accounting, and you have a passion and a keen understanding of financial complexities. And also in your spare time, you love to share and talk about the recent advancements in technology that's streamlining things for humanity. I'm guessing that's all things AI, which is just insane at the moment, what it's doing for the world and how it's disrupting. So yeah, I love that topic as well. But welcome, Peter. I just also, yeah, I think this is a really important topic, this navigating compliance, especially when expanding into the US. I know there's a lot of Amazon sellers, e-com sellers out there that really don't even think about tax and compliance and any of those issues, and I'm myself included. So I'm definitely keen to hear more from you, the expert. So let's dive in.
I'll attempt to live up to the reputation you've given me. Thank you. You're very kind.
I'm sure it'll be amazing. And I know you've got a special offer for us at the end. So let's just, if anyone's wanting to, stay on, we've only got half an hour, so it'll be short and sweet. But Peter, I guess one of the questions I wanted to first of all ask you is what do e-commerce sellers need to know about compliance in the US?
It's kind of interesting subject. So let me kind of share a slide here.
Yeah, sure.
And go into presentation. But I mean, effectively right now, what we're seeing, there's a lot of different economic variables at play today globally, right? We're seeing a lot from a geopolitical perspective. We're seeing a lot of different things that are currently happening around us. These types of things have impacts from an economics perspective and from a market perspective. And the reason why I'm sharing that is because effectively, we're noticing this year in 2023 some corrections with certain economies in Europe and in some of the other countries. As a byproduct, what we're starting to see is retailers understanding that they're not moving sufficient inventory in their home markets, are now looking to broaden the scope of the sales, to broaden. And to be candid, I mean, if you're successful in Europe or in Australia or in Asia, probabilities are that success is going to carry with you over to the United States, because the US is such a huge melting pot, if you will.
Yeah.
So there's so many cultures, so many different views, and so on and so forth. The long and the short is that the biggest difference between the United States and Australia with your GST or VAT in Europe, in most of those countries, when you look at Australia, when you look at Europe, they actually do everything in their power to make sure that you're properly informed, and that if you don't properly comply in those markets, you have no one to blame but yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The US is completely different. In the US, they're always trying to throw you off so that they could hit you with penalties and interest. So they want to be able to carve out additional revenue that they can't get unless you make a mistake. So right out of the gate, understanding that the US market is big on these I gotchas, as you call it. The next piece that you'll hear a little bit about, some people will ask about, is, well, what about tax treaties between countries and other such? Well, The type of taxes we're talking about in this case is sales tax. And those types of treaties really don't have application in this type of market and what we're trying to do. So really what we're going to look at is, when we're doing these types of analysis and we're looking at evaluating and expanding into market, what are the legal ramifications? So if I want to work with this market, what do I have to do to be able to enter it? If I do enter the market, what do I have to do to stay compliant and to be able to stay in that market? And this requires a little bit of building trust with that market, establishing your brand there one way or another, depending on the channels you work with, and beginning to start to set up operations in the United States, depending on how large your systems are. And then it's just segueing into that hyper expansion mode. A lot of people will misinterpret the fact that just because the states haven't contacted you and you've been doing sales for years, doesn't mean that they're ignoring you per se. It might be that your sales volumes aren't significant enough, or other components that they're just not paying attention to. So you kind of have to be careful there, at least on that part. And when you're evaluating these markets, is really on the overall compliance landscape and the taxation side of it all.
Okay.
You want me to continue?
Yeah, I guess the compliance thing as well. I guess there's also a little bit of, I know that for sellers selling in the US marketplace that are in another country, for example, you're living in Australia, you're selling in the US, there are certain tax parts that Amazon takes care of. So it's kind of, I guess, knowing what what we have to do to ensure that we're still compliant, and also what Amazon's side of the deal is as well for that.
I'm so glad that you asked that, because one of the pieces that occurs from time to time when we talk about compliance and technology and other such, we're talking about the sales platforms, right? Amazon versus Shopify. And what you brought up is something very interesting. It's called marketplace facilitator in the United States. That's the legal term. We spend extensive periods of time actually researching these laws and going through them. And when you read the laws, you understand that in most of the cases, the way it operates is the retailer Amazon is not, even though Amazon, the marketplace, is acting as a retailer, they're not defined as the retailer in this case. Mm-hmm. Actually, you're still the retailer and you're just using a marketplace, and a marketplace, what constitutes that is effectively a platform that brings a buyer and a seller together in one location and facilitates the transaction. There's a long legislation. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, and anyone that has been in this field will say the same thing, which is, just because you're dealing with a marketplace doesn't mean that you don't have additional responsibilities. They are broadening scope right now. One of the biggest things that's happening are states are trying to go after income tax criteria and other things. So there's a lot of moving parts in all this. And to tie it all together, this is where the technology comes into play. Because effectively what occurs is that keeping track of all the state laws, keeping track of all your transactions, keeping track of all the rules, keeping track of all the people, everything else, platforms, so on and so forth. It's a daunting task.
Yeah.
It takes a while. And this becomes burdensome and overwhelming for people. So what we do in helping with that compliance aspect is you don't have to know the information just for yourself. We have support solutions in place to assist with that as well. And not only that, but we also have teams and we have other individuals that help when navigating into some of those aspects. But the one thing we often say to people is do not do this on your own. Trying to understand another country's laws is fire.
Yeah.
And so we definitely do not say trying, attempting to do any of this type of stuff on your own.
Yeah. So hire an expert.
Absolutely. And that segues in us a little bit here. And so some of what we do is we have various different services that assist with the various complexities in that area, namely in regards to what are you responsible for versus what you're not responsible for. Are there any protections from your country versus being in the United States? What kind of criteria are you going to need to be set up for success for expansion into the United States? And honestly, the long and the short of it all is that there's no one magic solution for everything. Just like every store is unique and how they sell, so are the criteria based off of that store's model.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
really what you got to, as an international player, whether it be us or another entity, we're rooting for you. We want you to succeed. But find somebody to help you in this space, in that area.
Would that also include, I guess, advising how to best structure the company depending on your expansion plans or the level of revenue your business is bringing in? I would imagine like every seller could have a unique kind of individual need or differentiation for compliance or a setup in the US. Would that be also what you guys would advise on?
Most definitely, especially because of the different tax laws between the United States versus other countries.
Yeah.
And then the other issue is that obviously when you sell into the United States market, the US is very possessive of its market. And so they want you to abide by their rules.
Yeah, yeah. It's just such a gray area for me, and I'm sure it is for many sellers that are selling in the US from another country. So it's definitely worth having someone like you guys on just to help give you clarity on transparency and know that you're doing the right thing and you're not going to have an I gotcha from the tax department, which is nobody wants that. Tell me, what is there something that do you have like an example of something that's happened to a seller in the past where they haven't done compliance and the tax department's caught up with them?
Yeah. I mean, what we've kind of seen in various different situation scenarios, if you would, is, in the United States, Amazon and some of these other platforms have been, the legal term here in the US is called subpoenaed, meaning that they've been compelled legally to turn over all third-party seller data. And specifically, the states have made this criteria, subpoenaed Amazon, and Amazon has lost in court. So one of the problems that occurs is that you're not going to be able to remit sales into the United States without Big Brother, Big Sister, being the states in this case, actually observing and watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
And scrutinizing it, if you would. And so, the thing to understand here is from a data perspective and from these aspects and these ratios, you don't want to do this by yourself. You want to make sure that those resources are in place.
Yeah, I've noticed that too with a lot of banks now. They have a T's and C's in there that they have to turn over your bank statements to Amazon when requested. So I'm assuming this is all part and parcel of that.
Yep. And then, where is the inventory coming from? Into the United States. And where is it being stored within the United States? Are you using a third-party logistics partner in the United States, or are you just using Amazon? Are you, selling directly and fulfilling from Australia, as a hypothetical?
Yeah.
All of these variables have an impact on your compliance landscape.
So also a good question, I guess, I think for anybody out there that likes to deal with accountants is we want to minimize our tax, right?
Right.
We don't want to be paying more than we need to. So is that also something that you can help sellers with?
Yes. And let's talk about indirect taxes in the US versus Europe. So when we look at VAT, European retailers, they actually increase the price to account for value-added tax. In the United States, sales tax is actually the burden of the buyer, not the seller. But the seller is required to collect it from the buyer. So that's where things get a little weird for retailers, is that aspect of it all, having to convert into the person responsible for collecting it. What this means is that, this isn't money out of your operating expenses. This is actually coming directly from your constituency and from your clientele, if you would.
Yeah.
And as you continue to expand those operations and you get bigger, one misnomer that people don't realize in the United States, at least, they actually give you what they call a collector's discount. And what that is actually against that sales tax revenue that you collect in the US, Some states will kick back some of that money to offset your compliance requirements. So
No.
you're not out of pocket, even on the services side of things. They do a lot to assist. They just won't tell you what the rules are.
Interesting setup, hey. It's so different in every country.
Agreed.
Please share a little bit more about so this is a good slide actually. These are the aspects that are often overlooked.
So we go into a little bit of the importance of customer service, especially in the United States. Prompt response times to emails. Those types of poor responses have ways of hitting social media and then spiraling, wildly out of control. So you really want to be on top of your customer service. If you're using an Amazon, they do most of that for you. But if you're using like a Shopify, for example, you want to have teams that can respond to the United States. Supply chain management. This is where you make your money and save your money as well. How you handle your inventory, how you move it, where it's being stored. This is critical to your costs and expenses. So identifying the right type of 3PLs, as we say here in the United States, which is third-party logistic partners, or the right type of partners overall from a logistics standpoint. If you use a third-party logistics provider outside the United States, you're going to add more complexity down the road because now you're sending goods in from out of the country, and you have import taxes and other tariffs and duties.
Yeah.
Data security, while very important in the US, is even more important in Europe, especially with GDPR, and I don't see that going away anytime soon. So a lot of, as you continue to expand operations, your stores, Amazon or Shopify, may actually audit you and make sure that you're properly handling data and that it isn't being left hung around out in the wind exposed so that somebody can just randomly grab their personal credentials, if you would.
Yeah, for sure.
And then the final step I would say is sustainable practices, and that is realistic expectations. You can have a Ferrari system if you want, but I mean, understanding that if the system doesn't comply with the key criteria, and from a compliance perspective, you can spend as much money as you want. It's not going to prevent the problem. You have to have the right resources, and you got to make sure you're doing the right things here. So making sure that you're using the right type of best practices, and this is where service providers are going to earn and they're going to be worth their weight in gold, because when you have the right ones, they're going to save you a lot of money from a best practices perspective.
Yeah, this is an interesting topic. I think it's also going to become more important over this next decade. I feel like we're heading to this net zero carbon emission protocol. There is going to be potential tax implications in the future if you're not complying to that as well. I have a feeling this is what's coming up. Would you be in agreement?
I think so. I mean, it's definitely a hot topic right now within the global communities. Get it? Hot, pun intended. But joking aside, I think it's an area that is very visible before our constituency. This is a topic that's of interest for everybody. And so I certainly could see more taxes coming in that form of environmental aspects for sure.
Yeah, me too. But I think it's also a good incentive. And I know a lot of people are starting to move towards the sustainable practices, choosing eco-friendly products, recyclable or reusable. So yeah, I think that at the end of the day, that's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I think you lose nothing for having that kind of criteria, right?
Yeah.
Just being a good player in the community. And so agree.
Yeah. Tell me when somebody has kind of forgotten about the compliance and they've gone into the US and then they're getting their ass kicked, so to speak. Is it salvageable? Can people call you and go, hey, help Peter, this has just happened. Can you, sort me out? I mean, is there things that you can do?
Yes, there are a lot of things we can do. We are in the world of mitigating risk and the law of averages. And so what we're doing is we're recommending things that, mitigate the amount or probability that you're going to pop up on certain radars. That's half the battle. If you're already set up properly, then the saints aren't going to be able to bug you, because at the end of the day, auditors are working for the state, and the state has metrics that they expect those auditors to meet or exceed. So if
Yeah.
they're not getting revenue in those audits, they're wasting their time.
Yeah.
So if you're compliant, state really doesn't want to waste their time on your business because there's probably not much revenue they're going to get from it.
Hmm.
So attacking this early on will save you exponential forms of money in the form of compliance and going forward.
Yeah, and then I know in Australia the ATO is starting to bring in AI to start to do the auditing instead, I guess, and it's becoming a lot tighter, less room for human error. So I think there will be more of these things popping up. It'll be a bit more black and white rather than, you know, for example, they can just program it to say this year we're targeting small business owners that have, you know, work from home like 90% of the time, whatever the criteria could be, right? And then the thing just goes through and goes ping, ping, ping. And it could be the same in the States. Have you heard anything about the future of this use of AI for compliance?
Oh, absolutely. It's in every conversation right now at different government levels in the United States as we speak. You know, one of the things that was interesting that was brought up in the US the last couple of years, there's this new bill that they had passed. And as a criteria, part of the bill was that they would create 87,000 auditor or IRS jobs, tax jobs, employee jobs.
Wow.
In the advent of AI, you know, a fair amount of those individuals are just doing data manipulation or advanced data work. And AI is proven to be much more efficient with a lower error rate and able to dial into specific key data metrics or deltas very easily on its own. And the states and the feds are starting to realize that more and more. It's pretty impressive how quickly that they're moving to adopt, considering that less than a year ago this just became even public domain with, you know, ChatGPT and some of these LLM models, if you would, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the adoption, it has moved exponentially fast. And the type of way that the states are using it is that they're taking one of the biggest issues previously is you could bury data in tens of millions of transactions.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to find a needle in the haystack. That is now completely changed, and that is completely off the deck now. You
Yeah.
can't hide things in data anymore. The AI can find it.
Yeah.
And you can ask it for variables, all kinds of things. So one of the things that's going to happen going forward, it's going to be much, much more difficult for you not to be accurate or to be fully truthful, we'll say, with the audits. And because of that, it's much cheaper to address it before you get it audited, because then there's nothing for an auditor to go after. And so that, to that degree, that's the criticality, and to what you're saying, you know, addressing this before AI gets involved and has its ability to comb the data is going to be very important going forward. I agree.
Yeah, so it definitely sounds like do the right thing. If you're thinking about expanding into the US or any other marketplace, is to reach out to guys like yourself and do some compliance, have a meeting and work out how best to structure the business. So going forward from the get-go, you are, I guess it also gives you peace of mind, right? You're going in knowing that you're doing everything above board.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head, Amanda. I mean, at the end of the day, you're building an empire. You put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into building up this business. Wouldn't it be nice to sell it, you know, for revenue? And there are people and entities that buy businesses, but they do evaluate the sales tax side of it. So you're not just investing in the business, but you're also investing in your future by making sure that the business is in a position to sell at a later date.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely lots of ways to cut corners in business, but I think, yeah, at the end of the day, if you want to sell, then that's when that could potentially come around to bite you in the ass, so to speak. So, yeah, I think that's definitely a really good point. I think if you're thinking about the long-term strategy or the exit strategy, then think about how you want that to look to a potential buyer.
Exactly.
Yeah, you want it to look good and everything to be clean. Peter, tell us, I know you've got a special offer for our listeners. What do you want to share that with us?
Yes, and I think, is Kathy still here? Or we may have lost her. So let me pull that off.
Is it a free Nexus exposure
Yeah,
analysis?
Yes. So let me share what we're going to do for you there. If you are a retailer and you've been selling to the US and you're up late at night wondering what my exposure looks like, because of this conversation, because it's Proboxx, and they've mentioned the Proboxx webinar, we will do a free Nexus evaluation. And what that means is that effectively, we will tell you what your exposure looks like in the US. And we do that for any client. We require that. But for Proboxx's case, we're not going to charge for it. So as long as they drop the Proboxx name, they can reach out to our sales division and they'll hook you up and get you set up into our system to tell you what your landscape looks like currently today.
Awesome. That's so great. Thank you, Peter. Very, very generous of you. And as a thank you as well, I know we will share this webinar on each of our platforms. So Proboxx would also want to offer your clients or listeners a $200 shipping discount for customers only. They just need to mention the word ampersand and the coupon new200, and I'll pop in the links for your Nexus analysis, your website, and our website details so that people can access those special offers into the description on YouTube. And this is also going to go out onto our socials and our subscriber base. So I'm sure there will be people taking you up on that offer because it is so important. Now that I've listened to this, I'm like, there's no way I need to come and like have a session with you, because I guess you just assume, right? A lot of the times you just assume, oh, I guess Amazon's taking care of the sales tax and there's not really much else that you need to do. That's what you kind of think. But when you drill down, there is just so much more to this. It's so complex. And with AI coming on board as well, there's nowhere to hide anymore.
Big Brother is watching.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
and I'll say this much: thank you so much for offering that immense value to our constituency as well. They'll appreciate it. So thank you, Amanda.
I'm just going to pop in the Proboxx website. It's www.proboxx.io as well, if people just want to jump on, and then you can also book a free demo or jump into the portal and start your first quote with that shipping discount code new200 and get started with us as well. And thank you so much again for your time, Peter. It's been great. It's been very enlightening, and I look forward to chatting with you soon.
The pleasure all mine. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Cheers.